Good afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon. Hello. Dear students, I'm happy to introduce to you Maracle, who has written a book on feminism titled I Am Woman. You might be familiar with Alice Walker's womanism and writings by African American, Native American women about women's experience is obviously um, a rejoinder, a counter to Western feminism. Because, as we know, race and gender are issues that figure prominently in colonization. So, it is the native woman is colonized um, as much as the native man is colonized. And each person's experience of colonialism is unique. And considering that they are writing from a post colonial position, they are writing about how colonized they are. Okay. So this is about decolonizing, it's about decolonizing the mind. So, anyhow, we'll come to that by and by. But Maracle was a Native American writer. She wrote in the 70s, and she was associated with the Red Power movement. She was not a Native American, Native Canadian. In America, they call them Native Americans. In Canada, they call them Native people or First Nations. Please remember, they are known as the First Nation Canadians. A little background to uh, what happened in America and Canada. As we know, uh, settlers from England settled in America and the northern part of America, which is Canada. And this settlement was not entirely a peaceful process, as one already knows. The indigenous people of America and the North of America, Canada, they were subjected to harsh treatment, just in the same way as it happened in Australia. Uh, there was a genocide, killing of tribes, tribes being totally wiped out. And the white settlers established their supremacy in that region. They did not negotiate with the Native Americans whose land they were taking, Native Canadians whose land they were taking, but rather used force, imposed themselves. They attempted to have treaties with them, but the treaties were unfair. Um, the first fleet, as you know, arrived on the Mayflower, and they were a group of people from England, and these English colonies were established initially in the New England area, or what is called the Massachusetts Bay, New Hampshire, Connecticut, New Haven, Rhode Island. These were the first English colonies on the Northeast as well as in Virginia. Initially, they built bridges of trade and they involved the local people, the indigenous population, because their support was needed to build infrastructure, bridges, roads, settlements. So they provided the workforce. But as the the settlements in these areas, the English settlements in these areas became stronger and stronger, they started marginalizing the indigenous people, or rather exercising power over them, and uh, exercising power to the extent of these tribes diminishing and eventually some of them vanishing. So, as you know, that they did not have, the indigenous people did not have a cash economy. So there was this barter system. So maybe services were provided in exchange for money, or the goods were exchanged. Being the North America being a very cold region, fur trade is one of the things in which the native population was involved. Then lumbering, cutting wood. There are so many things, the material things that were traded, but also ideas were traded. What are the main ideas that were traded? Religion. So native religions, which are based in worship of nature, of natural forces, and also reverence for the ancestors and spirit beings that are related to their culture, their myth, their tradition. This was being um, erased by the infiltration of Christianity and Christian ideas. In many places, Native American um, worldview, faith went alongside Christian beliefs, because many of them felt that the Holy Spirit of the Bible and the Great Spirit, which the Americans revered, were one and the same. Uh, in some places, it was in conflict with their belief system. So, religion, uh, the incursion of Christianity into the native tribal regions was generally not appreciated. In fact, in hindsight, it, Christianity is also seen as responsible for their loss of culture. You might recall that in the 1960s, there was a civil rights movement among the African American people. The 60s and 70s were a period of activism in America, the African American people fighting for their civil rights. It was also the time when there was protest among the younger generation, among academicians, among the youth. There was solidarity in resisting, in speaking out against America's involvement in Vietnam. So it was an era of consciousness raising and protest. The Native American cause also surfaced at this time, though they went sort of in tandem. The civil rights movement and the Red Power movement, they went along. They were movements that were going alongside. They were going on in a parallel fashion. But they didn't actually connect. They actually didn't join forces. Uh, but they probably drew on each other for strategy, and there was consciousness of um, each other's cause, but each worked in isolation. It's quite understandable because the Red Power movement was among the tribal people. So it was it was located in a different place. It's located in tribal reservations, and mostly the Red Power movement was in the north of America. So it was a movement for self-determination, where they were asking back for their lands It was they were asking back for their liberties. They were asking back for the asking for the dignity of the native people, which was lost. So the colonization, as you know, began in the 1600s, and it was a steady erasure of native culture and a steady um, wiping out of the native population. And it is only more than 200 years down the line that the native population rose in very became articulate. There have been battles fought in this period uh, prior to the 1960s and 70s. There are many bloody battles and resistance from the Native American people, which again were not successful in terms of crushing the oppression of the white um, forces, military forces. So, um, so throughout the country's history, the US government has signed more than 350 treaties with the Native Americans. But uh, the none of the treaties was based on mutual benefit, right? It was all the treaties were one-sided, and as you can see, they were created under duress, under great pressure. They were forced um, to acquiesce. Moreover, what the advantage that the um, English people, they were not yet Americans, right? So they were the English settlers. The advantage that the English settlers had over the native tribes was that of a cash economy, that of literacy, that of a gun culture using arms and ammunition. So it was an unequal, all the treaties were unfair and the battles were unequal. And when the with the when these English colonies united to form the United States of America, even more their power was consolidated, and these white settlers expanded westward. So as the expansion of the white settlers took place in America, the more the native tribes were pushed into smaller reservations. Now, going into reservations also involved force. They were removed from their native tribal lands and put into reservations. Reservations were uh, were places that were allotted to them in which they were confined. So life on the reservation in itself was a life of being uprooted from their native tribal lands. And as we know, in indigenous culture, the culture is very strongly linked to the land. The land is sacred. The stories, the myths, the belief system, everything is so deeply connected to the land. The spirituality is connected to the land, that being removed from their lands and placed in reservations rendered them uh, helpless, useless. And this is also going into reservations is one reason why they uh, were forced to accept the settlers' lifestyle. Maybe their type of occupation could be farming, it could be trade. Uh, so the native way of life was lost. And reservations were also places where they were under control, right? So they were under the control of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA. So having been put into reservations, and all these reservations coming under the Bureau of Indian Affairs established the complete control of the federal government. And two key words here are assimilation and integration. Now, assimilation is what the US government expected of the native peoples, and assimilation is what they expect of all migrants also. Okay, people going from other countries to settle in the US, they are expected to assimilate and integrate. Assimilation and integration involves, again, loss of identity, loss of culture. So being relocated on reservations was something that uh, stifled the spirit of the Native American people. It definitely was uh, oppressive. And when oppression of this kind reigns, the spirit of people flags. The spirit is killed, and killing the spirit of a group of people is the best way to overpower them, more than physically crushing people, robbing people of their sense of identity, their pride in themselves, rendering them helpless by taking away taking them away from their lands, taking their lands away from them. Is These are the strategies that the colonizers adopted. Now, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, as I said, uh, because of their control over them, they imposed laws on them, and the this generated hatred for the US government and the white settlers and the white majority. So this animosity, this hatred, there's a mutual hatred between the white settlers and the Native American people. Having been um, pigeonholed into these reservations, and having had a way of life imposed upon them, or rather being stripped of what was of land, culture, heritage, Native people uh, began to get involved in poverty, get involved in crime. It's quite natural. It happens when uh, rural people move to urban areas where they don't have occupation, they don't have a livelihood. They try to make ends meet by thieving, stealing. In the case of the native people, they the relocation to reservations where they did not have uh, the livelihood that they would have liked to have. They did not have their personal freedom, where uh, they could not live as useful, respectable human beings. When their spirit and their spirit was crushed and killed. That being the case, in reservations, what came to reign was alcoholism. And then also, Native American, when they could not live on reservations, they migrated to cities. They started living on the fringes of cities, um, and became like slum dwellers living in ghettos. So dope, crime, that dope means drugs, crime, all this became associated with the Native American native population. So the Red Power movement, as I mentioned, is can is something that happened around the same time as the civil rights movement led by the African American people. It happened around the 60s and 70s. It was uh, uh, all the native people coming together for to assert themselves and to fight back, to demand self-determination. Uh, there were many organizations part of this Red Power movement: the American Indian Movement, the National Indian Youth Council, National Congress of American Indians. So, where did this phrase red power come from? The word red power was coined by Vine Deloria. All right. So that is how it came to be called the Red Power movement, because they were different tribes, Cherokee, Sioux, Lakota, all these different tribes coming together. And Indian is the name given to them by the colonizer. They were called um, Red Indians. They were called Red Indians. And this is very derogatory, right? So they didn't want to be known as Indians, but they wanted to be known as Native people, Native Canadian, Native American, and First Nations. They're the people who uh, were the first occupants of the land. And that is how they identified uh, politically. So having one identity which brings together all the tribes of American Indians as a in under the Red Power movement. So the background to this Red Power movement was the trail of broken treaties. I said so many treaties were formed, but all the treaties were unfair, and the treaties, they did not abide by the conditions that they said they would uh, that they committed themselves to. So this trail of broken treaties and what happened at Wounded Knee, we will come to that later. So all that happened at all these happenings, the entire history of dispossession, of oppression, forms a background to the Red Power movement. So the Bobby Lee was a very prominent figure. Bobby Lee is a Indian Lee Maracle was called Bobby among her fellow activists, and she was called Bobby Lee. So her autobiography is titled Bobby Lee, Indian Rebel. Where she writes, it's actually very much a document about her involvement with the Red Power movement. And as you know, an activist has quite a journey in terms of um, finding comradeship, in finding solution to the native problem, in political ideology. So, in Bobby Lee actually began with the communists. So this is something that happens in most of the struggles of indigenous people, and even here in India with the Dalit people, tribal people. They begin their assertion of identity and fight for rights with the communists. But because the communists see the problem as an economic problem rather than uh, cultural identity. Communists don't concentrate much on the cultural identity, but they take it as an economic problem, and all people of all communities, if they are economically empowered, they can come out of their respective uh, position of disadvantage. So after a point, the whether it be Native American or African American or the Dalits in India or the Adivasis in India, they are disenchanted with the communists. They come out of their association with the communists. And this is what happened even with Lee Maracle. So in this book, Lee Rebel, Indian Rebel, she talks about how she initially associated with the communists, and then she came into the Red Power movement, and there were communists in that. And then how by and by the cultural identity had to gain um, had to be a gain priority over the economic and social issues. And self-determination again is making a bid for their own um, identity related to land, asking back for their land, asking for their rights, civil liberties as well. So she has written fiction and poetry, but these books are mainly related to her expression of the indigenous people's worldview. And I Am Woman is um, not about Western feminism, but it is about Native women and bringing to the fore that Native women cannot join forces with Western feminists because Western feminists um, view oppression for the Western feminist, oppression comes from the white male, all right? But for the Native woman, even the white woman is part of that oppressive regime, which has subdued and subjugated them. Uh, Lee Maracle was also an academician. She held positions in different universities. She was a lecturer, and having this is very important to note that her academic position is what helped her to speak to Western feminists. So, speaking to Western feminists and countering their um, line of argument, which subsumes all women into one category. So, this is what even the African American women contest, that all women cannot be subsumed into one category, uh, into one category, and that one category together will resist the domination of men. So patriarchy is something that the Western feminists resist, but the Native woman has a more inclusive perspective on life, and whether even African American women to say that inclusiveness where they include men, they include children, they include the aged people, they are supportive of family and relationships among women, relationship between man and woman, relationship between mother and child, right, and relationship in the community. This is a very important thing that Native American women see themselves as belonging to community. On the other hand, Western feminists, given the fact that they come from a have their own worldview and their own experience, in which individuality is more important. Individuality um, is what they assert, but it is that sense of community is not there in among Eurocentric people, European people, Western women. So for indigenous people, whether Aboriginal women, Native American women, First Nations women in Canada, Dalit women in India, Adivasi women, this community is very important for indigenous people. So please understand why this treatise had to be written. I Am Woman had to be written because Lee Maracle is an educated woman. And when you're educated, your mind gets colonized. So if you go to a school or a college which has a certain religious or political orientation, the education that they give will also have that religious and political orientation. So having been to school or university, and then being in the company of educated white women, it was probably natural for her to internalize some of their ideas. So that is why she says that she had to get in touch with her inner self and get in touch with her social identity, the group of women to whom she belongs, the social cultural group to which she belongs, to speak about her womanhood. So, this is what she says in the preface. I Am Woman represents my personal struggle with womanhood, culture, traditional spiritual beliefs, and political sovereignty, written at a time, uh, written at this time during the time of the uh, of asserting themselves for their own identity and beliefs. And when she started writing I Am Woman, she had settled on very little. That is only this she knew, that she, I, and other Native women ought to combine our perceptions of spirituality, culture, womanhood, and sovereignty from a place free of sexist and racist influence. This struggle was not over. So, sexist and racist. So, the very patriarchal was white patriarchal white patriarchal systems are sexist, understand, and also racist. So the from the white perspective, they look down on women. Women are inferior, and uh, native women are even more inferior than the white women. So she has to counter both the racism of the white man and the white woman, and she has to counter the sexism of the white man, and the also the sexism of the native man whose mind is colonized, who absorbs ideas that are from Western culture. So this exercise of writing I Am Woman was very liberating for her. I Am Woman was intended to release me from the chains with which I bound myself, chains which were welded to me by a history neither I nor my ancestors created. So, I Am Woman is an that we are studying is an essay in the book I Am Woman. So, as you can see, these are all the um, titles of the different chapters. Um, First is I Want to Write. All right. This writing is a very liberating process. Writing is, as we know, a cognitive process. We think and write. We organize our ideas when we write. And writing can be very therapeutic. It gives a release for all the feelings. Writing also requires logic. So when you write, you are able to create an argument, right? And she um, is able to think about what is her stance. And then she has this assertion, I am woman. Now, this assertion, I am woman, is very deeply fraught um, the with the feelings of a woman. It means that it as you we go and by in this lecture, we'll see it means she says that I am human. First of all, I am human. I am a woman with feelings of a woman, with the mind of a woman, with the body of a woman. Because what happens with colonization and oppression, the whole human being is totally goes into oblivion. They try to make you invisible and non-existent. This is what colonization does. Please note, colonization is very strategic in trying to render people, okay, indigenous people, Aboriginal people, lower, in India, the lower caste people, of course, by the upper caste majority. One of the ways in making people, uh, in oppressing people, is to make them feel that make them invisible, they don't exist. So she says that I am woman, and woman vis-a-vis man, woman, I am, she doesn't say I am feminist. So I am woman as opposed to I am feminist. This is a very important statement. I am woman as opposed to I am feminist. So when women, white women assert their identity, they say, I am feminist. When you want to say that you're a liberated woman, you say, I am feminist. But rather than saying I'm feminist, she would say she is woman, because that word feminism doesn't sit well with Native American, Native women, because feminism is loaded with, and it has a Western, uh, it is oriented towards the experiences of Western women and the agenda of Western women. The chapter Black Robes is about the Catholic people who have, the Catholic priests who have been so much a part of this um, colonizing process. And Rusty is a Native American woman and talks about how Rusty has been degraded and made what they call a skid row bum. A skid row bum is a person who lives on the streets, is on dope, right? And the ways of my grandmothers is also a very important part of this book, where she talks about they have in the Native women, and who draw their strength from all the stories and all that is told to them about their tradition from their grandmothers. So we will go through some of the significant lines from I Am Woman. So the first thing is, the when she is when the Western feminists, white feminists, invite her to join them and be a part of them, she realizes that every time she has to speak about where she comes from, her tribe, her people, what is happening among her people, um, she realizes that she is being dictated to. They are telling her what she should do, and she's asked to provide. She's relegated to the position of a slave, right? And when she has to speak about her people, she feels that she's a traitor. She is letting down her people, and so uh, she has to totally disconnect from Western feminists and uh, assert her position of her people, and that actually there is no bridge between Native women and white women. Native women cannot join forces with white women, because um, she is struggling to remove the burden of recent colonial history, and white women have been part of the process of colonization. Their complicity means their involvement, their support. They have the complicity of white women is there in the oppression of Native women. So she says, do not equate feminism and womanhood. Okay. So she is celebrating womanhood of Native women, and womanhood was defined through feminism. And if it was that way defined through feminism, it is racist ideology which had defined womanhood for the Native woman. And uh, Feminism is, of course, the European woman's rebellion against patriarchy, but in a native woman joining that rebellion against the white man and patriarchy in the Western world or Eurocentric world is pointless. There is no meaning to it because e- each one's oppression is different. The white woman's oppression by the white man is different. The Native American woman's oppression is different. She's oppressed by white man, white woman, and to an extent even by her own men of her own community. So when she realized this only when she was asked to give an interview. And in that interview, she said that for her, womanhood did not exist. It, yeah, she says that I feel deep remorse now. I feel for those women who had to watch red-faced while this traitor blurted out into the microphone in front of a multitude of non-native women that it mattered not that I was a native woman. So this is where she feels that she has been a traitor. So she felt that she had explained she had joined the cause of the white feminists, and womanhood was the same across um, the board. Womanhood was same across social strata. Womanhood was the same across cultural divides, across cultural groups, whether native, whether African and American, whether white, whether Spanish, womanhood is the same. So the standing up there and saying that it doesn't matter that I am a native woman, I am a woman, is she regretted for having made that statement. And her comrade Robert Mendoza told her it was a great video, but if she had stood up and said, I am a native woman, and I belong to this tribe, and these are my sisters, and we are all native women, that would have inspired the native women. So identifying with her people. So this is one thing in all writing by marginalized groups and marginalized women, that they identify with their community. So it is not the individual self, but the collective self. Please note, it's not the individual self, but the collective. All right. So when she says, I am woman, it is not she as an individual woman, but that collective identity. All right. This is what we see. This is the difference between the autobiography of a Western person and the autobiography of a Dalit writer or an Aboriginal writer or a Native writer, first Native American writer or First Nations Canadian writer, that they identify with community. So there's a I, when the person tells their own story, the story is not about themselves, but the story is about their people, their community. So this collective voice comes into the writing. So when she says, I am woman, it is speaking about Native women. Uh, Before 1961, we were wards of the government. She refers to them being living on reservations, not having their own citizenship, their identity. So this fight for native self-government, for the native land, is what gave them their own identity. So with the coming of the Red Power movement, the native people had their own identity. I responded like so many other women as a person without sexuality. So each person has their sexuality, their men, I'm a man, I'm a woman. Having spoken out that about her position, saying it doesn't matter whether I am a woman, All right, doesn't matter that I'm a woman. I'm just I'm Native American. Doesn't matter whether I'm a woman. That stance she had to correct, and she had to say that she is not part of the women's liberation movement, and Native women do not like even words like women's liberation. Um, Now, she also here alludes to how Native women have been used as objects of sexual desire by Native men. In this book, I Am Woman, and also in her autobiography, Bobby Lee, Indian Rebel, she talks about how the white men, they take Native women as easy targets for a sexual gratification. They easily get sex from these women, right? They think that these women will easily provide them sex. So this is when she woke up to the fact that she's a woman. She is not the woman in the advertisement in the billboard who is so very who is beautiful and who's attractive and whose appearance shows that she doesn't do any physical work, that she is a very dainty ladylike creature. But I'm a woman for whom mobility, muscular movement. So I'm a working class woman, right? Physical prowess. So she has to drive, she has to clean, she has to work hard. Um, and she is a strong, mobile woman. Now, she says that as a woman in her life, there is a man who's a lover. There are children, all right? And there are other women in the community who are her sisters. That's why she says, I want to look across the table in my own kitchen and see in the brown eyes of the man who shares my life the beauty of my own reflection. More, I want to look across my kitchen table at the women of color who share my life. This is a very important thing, because of the sense of community, and they're not very individualistic like the white women. Their homes are open to each other. So at the kitchen table, you will find other women dropping in, talking, sharing. And that is how these women have this bonding and they have the strength to go through life because they stand by each other. On the other hand, because of that individualism that is there in among white people, each woman lives in her own ivory tower, which will be her own hell. Okay, so sense, that is why the home for the white woman is a prison. mm, Prison from which she has to liberate herself. But the home for the uh, native woman is a place where many people come, where people in the community come, there they sit around the kitchen table and talk. So she wants to unclutter her mind filled with white opinion, who see the genius of their minds uncluttered by white opinion. So this mind is free. Mind is not colonized by white opinion. I want to sit with my grown daughters and experience the wonderment of our mutual affection. I want to set the standard for our judging, our brilliance, our beauty, our passion. The idea of beauty, right? The idea of beauty also is dictated by the dominant class, by the dominant women. So, Native American women, Native Canadian women, First Nations women, they have their own type of beauty, which may not conform, definitely does not conform to the standards set by white women, but they want to celebrate their own physicality, their physiognomy, their appearance. And when they sit and talk to each other, they celebrate each other. She says that native men uh, could be colonized, and when native men are colonized, their minds are colonized, they treat their women badly. The denial of native womanhood is a reduction of a whole people to a subhuman level, because women and women's identity and women's power is critical to the dignity of a whole community, a whole people, a whole nation. Because when people are treated as objects, okay, not as subjects, treated as objects, treated, not regarded as human beings, how do you dehumanize a person? In day to day life, we dehumanize people by treating them badly, by scolding them, by making them feel inferior, by making them feel that they're not as good as us. Okay. Now, every human being has a place. They say, no, there's a place in the sun for everyone. So when equality is not the the not the force operating in society, when there is discrimination and some people are made to feel lower than the others and made to feel that they are less human, that is the dehumanizing that we do. So this she's putting they are put down not to put down to a subhuman level, below human. So animals beget animals. The dictates of patriarchy demand that beneath the native male comes the native female, because that is the hierarchical structure in the uh, among white people. Below a man is a woman, and below the woman is the children. Not so in the among indigenous people, but when Western ideas come into this community, it dictates that the native woman comes below the native man, and that's how racism operates. And racism creates these kind of um, levels, these kind of strata. So in which one sees the other below themselves. This happens in caste also, any caste, the caste system in India, where people feel better or feel good about themselves because they are above somebody else, right? So this is how we rob people of God-given humanity. All humans are equal, but if we you and I relegate someone to a lower level and get our sense of worth from, or our sense of superiority or importance in this world by seeing them as being lower to us, then uh, that is characteristic of um, oppressive behavior. So Leader Miracle also talks about how she was invited to sensitization workshops organized by white women, and where she's asked to sensitize them to the experiences of Native women, to help the white women understand Native American women. So she felt for two reasons she could not do that. One is, why should she be instrumental in helping them get rid of their guilt? If they want to know more about Native American women, they have to cross the floor and come over to the camp of Native American women, and um, they have to learn. They can even summoning a Native American woman, requesting a Native American or indigenous woman to teach white women about the feelings of Native women is uh, being very standoffish, being is assuming a position of superiority. So she says that she will not take part in this kind of um, conference or workshop where she is called upon to sensitize them. White women invite us to speak if the issue is racism or Native people. We are there to teach, to sensitize them, or to serve them. So she feels that this is like servitude, serving them. Again, we are called to serve them. We are expected to retain our position well below them as their servants. We are not, as a matter of course, invited as an integral part of their movement, the women's movement. So when Native women stand up and take part in the women's liberation movement, they are uh, colluding with them. Colluding means aligning with them, with the white women, and working against Native women and acceding to the erasure of the womanhood of Native women. So men who stand up and passionately articulate our aspirations about sovereignty are revered as powerful leaders. So in their own community, the male activists are reverenced, they are respected. But the women who do the same thing, women leaders among the native people are, made fun of. And the men are respected more. Why does this happen? Because they have internalized that racism. They have internalized that pattern where men are superior and women are inferior. So then she closes her essay by saying, "Let us not forget Wounded Knee. Let Wounded Knee be the last time they erased us from the world of the living. Let us all blossom beautiful and productive." So this is actually a reference to the battle at Wounded Knee, or the Wounded Knee massacre. How did this is one of the landmark events and one of the saddest events in Native American history, the battle at Wounded Knee. So as we know, the white settlers settled in the New England area, and then there was this expansion towards the west. And when they expanded towards the west, that is from the east to the west, they were met with a lot of resistance from the native tribes there. And this resistance intensified, and there were so many treaties by which the native population was tried to, where native population was brought into subjugation, or trying to, make them uh, work with the settlers, but the intention was to subjugate them, not treat them as equals. So, um, plain tribal leaders, among which the Sioux Indians were most prominent, there was this treaty in that area, the Treaty of L- Fort Laramie, uh, where 60 million acre Great Sioux Reservation and created agencies to represent the federal government among each tribe. If the Lakota stayed on the reservation and refrained from attacking white settlers, they would be provided with food rations, education, and other state benefits. So, see, you can see how they are, their resistance is curbed and curtailed by giving them food. So, they have been stripped of their native way of life, their livelihood, put in reservations, and given education, rations, creating dependency. This is one strategy of the colonizer. They create dependency. They they handicap the native people, the indigenous people, of their own ways of living and having their own livelihood, having their own culture. And because they start depending on the rations, they don't go to work. So laziness sets in, alcoholism sets in, and this is the way. Uh, 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 this is typical of the way the white people try to systematically, very systematically try to wipe out the native groups from the face of the earth. So now they are on this reservation, but these people, they there was the US government had curbed the freedom of these people, put them on the reservation, but they did not have right to the natural resources of that place. The natural resources could be the timber, wood, water, whatever be the natural resources. The US government started harnessing those natural resources and getting the profit and benefit out of that. So, because, so again, these people resisted and they fought. Now, in this, so there was a lot of conflict, lot of tension. That is what we're trying to say. So there's a already it is a it is a hotbed of conflict. There is resistance. There is unhappiness, and at this time, this something that emerged was the ghost dance. There was a person named Vovoka. Okay, he revived this ghost dance, which was already there in their culture. It was there and it faded away. But a prophet named Vovoka, he revived this, and he had a kind of trance. He became unconscious, and then in that time he had a dream, and in that dream, God is supposed to have told him that the Indians uh, had to be peaceful. Okay, they should not fight against the white persons. They should be peaceful, but do the ghost dance. Okay, they should ritual ghost dance, and if they did that ghost dance regularly, God would return to the earth and defeat the European colonists, and they would be buried 30 feet under the ground. So, a very uh, what do you say? It is maybe an escapism, escape from reality. And the idea of the ghost dance is not to fight the settlers. They are indulging in their own type of spirituality in a hope that they would be able to, through their spiritual power, overthrow the Europeans. But this uh, took a different shape. So there was a chief named Sitting Bull, and he uh, stood up for the people. The Sitting Bull himself did not believe in the ghost dance, but this US Army arrived on the reservation and they wanted to put an end to this ghost dance. So when there was this attempt from the US, from the federal government, from the white people to stop something that was their cultural practice, this ghost dance. Again, the um, animosity, hatred, and the conflict was heightened. It became stronger and greater. And in this, um, they were a Sitting Bull. He spoke up for his people, and he said that the people should be allowed to have their cultural practices. But the U.S. government decided to arrest Sitting Bull for the for representing the people. So 43 tribal police for so people the forces of government forces were dispatched to Sitting Bull's cabin. Um, and then his Sitting Bull's followers resisted. There was a fierce struggle and shooting, killing, and among the dead was Sitting Bull. Then there was another military officer named Colonel James Fawcett, and what he did was he decided that he has to uh, he has to strip the native people of their arms and ammunition. All right, he has to see that they don't have their arms so that for to fight. So this is another strategy. So he positioned four Hotchkiss guns on a hilltop bordering the clearing. So what he did is he put all the people of this tribe into a circle. He herded them into a clearing in the forest, and big guns were planted on top of the hill surrounding this clearing. So you can visualize it's a circle with guns all around them from the top. So the guns being pointed down into this circle where all the Native American people are uh, bunched up together. So this is so threatening that they could be killed it is so intimidating. If they do not surrender, they will be killed. And then they are stripped of all their arms and ammunition. And while they were doing this, while this was happening, a man named Sid Straight began to dance the ghost dance. And because that is the spirituality which they are invoking. So in a time of being humiliated, of being smitten to their knees and dehumanized, they are looking to their own source of spiritual strength. So he starts dancing this ghost dance. And he tells his people that if they dance this ghost dance, and if they wear they have, since they have their sacred ghost shirts on them, the bullets of the white man will not touch them. So the ghost dance reached a frenzy. Um, so when a person from this tribe named Black Coyote refused to give up his gun, the weapon accidentally went off. And then, so it was taken as assault from the native people. Only one gun went off accidentally, but then the retaliation was very fierce, very harsh. So the whole battery of guns fired on this innocent group of people who were doing their ghost dance, and they were killed. So that is a massacre. And this happened at Wounded Knee. So this is the Battle of Wounded Knee, right? It was definitely a massacre. You have a picture of Wounded Knee. And D. Brown, a person, he did a well-researched work uh, and wrote from the Native American side. So you know that the Bureau of Indian Affairs, all right, they portrayed the destruction at Wounded Knee as a battle. So battle means it is a war where both parties have engaged in attack. But it is not so. It is a massacre because the Native American people, they were just innocently doing their ghost dance. And because they were cornered, they were captured and cornered, and they were looking for their own spiritual help, they started their ghost dance. Accidentally, one gun went off and from their side, and that invited a huge, heavy retaliation from the US federal forces side. And all these people who were weaponless people, they were killed. So it was a massacre and not a battle. And there is today this monument built at Wounded Knee, and you see the flags and the of the different tribes over there, all of them showing their how they are mourning for what happened at Wounded Knee. Now, this book by D. Brown is the Native American people's version of what happened. So he has documented accounts from different chiefs, different individuals, and this is what we call revisionist history. The history of the oppressor will record history to the advantage of the oppressor, to the advantage of the dominant group, and to support their narrative on what happened. See, when something happens, there are different versions of it, and the voiceless are not heard. And those who are more powerful, it is their version that uh, becomes the official version. But D. Brown has put together the narratives of different native people to record what actually happened. And this book became a national bestseller. He has used council records, autobiographies, first-hand descriptions, and accounts from chiefs, warriors, and other tribesmen who have told in their own words about the battles, massacres, and broken treaties that have demoralized and defeated their native people. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee changed forever our vision of how the West was really won. So there's no grand narrative about how the West was won by the settlers. Rather, it is such a shameful history that the West was won by the massacre of innocent native people. So this is why Lee Maracle says that Wounded Knee should be always remembered, and um, like and that monument over there, just like any other monument which is in memoriam of lives that have been lost, should serve to reconnect the native people with their tragic history and help them to be strong in their sense of self, strong about their own identity. And every Native American woman should um, be conscious of her cultural identity, cultural heritage, and be very clear that uh, Western feminist ideology has no place in the empowerment of the Native woman, the First Nations women of America and Canada, because they have all through resisted and fought the systematic uh, this is a systematic um, erasure of the native peoples by the settlers. Thank you.